Alice's mind drifted back to a memory from long ago, a memory that still felt as vivid as the day it had happened. It had become a defining moment in her life, one that had shaped the person she had become. She had lived in a small town nestled in the mountains above the desert for a period of time when she was a young girl. It was a quiet village where nothing much ever happened until the day an earthquake struck. The quake was sudden and violent, shaking the settlement to its core. Houses crumbled, roads buckled, and trees fell to the ground. In the chaos that followed, the people of the community scrambled to assess the wreckage and to begin the long process of rebuilding. Alice's family was among those who were hit the hardest. Their house had suffered extensive damage, and they were forced to move into a makeshift shelter until they could make the necessary repairs. For weeks, the village was in a frenzy of activity as people worked tirelessly to repair their houses and infrastructure. Everywhere she looked, she saw people hauling debris, repairing roofs, and rebuilding walls. There was no time for anything else, it seemed. The adults were all busy with their work, and the children were left to entertain themselves. Bored and restless, the kids wandered around the village, unsure of what to do. Feeling dejected and ignored, Alice and her best friend, Amara, decided to set out on a walk through the nearby woodlands, hoping to find something interesting to occupy their time. As they made their way through the dense forest, they stumbled upon a small path that they had never noticed before. Intrigued, they followed it, and before long they found themselves at the base of a mountain, staring up at a towering rock face that appeared to have an opening.
"Hey, what's that?"
said Amara, pointing to the opening. "I don't know," said Alice, "but it looks like some kind of cave." As they looked up, the girls noticed a strange energy emanating from the rocks. It seemed to be calling to them to explore the unknown. Without a second thought, they began to scale the mountain, working together to navigate the treacherous terrain. As they climbed higher and higher, the energy grew stronger, and soon they found themselves at the entrance of a cave hidden within the mountain. The entrance appeared as though it had been covered intentionally by rocks at one point. But now, there was an opening that was almost large enough to crawl through, as big rocks had been shifted aside.
"Should we go in?"
asked Amara, looking at Alice. "I don't know if we should," said Alice hesitantly. "We don't know what's in there." But Amara was already crawling towards the opening, eager to explore.
"Come on, Alice,"
she called out. With curiosity beckoning them forward, they worked together to clear the rocks and create a larger opening they could both fit through. Alice hesitated for a moment before following Amara into the cave. As they made their way through the dark cavern, they felt a strange energy coursing through the air. It was as though an otherworldly force was humming and pulsing around them. As they continued exploring, they stumbled upon chambers and small coves of crystals. Amara touched the crystals and picked up a few that had been lying on the ground.
"These are so cool. I'm taking these with me,"
said Amara. Colorful gems were all over the walls of the cave. They had never seen so many crystals in one place before. Excitedly, she began to touch the crystals on the walls. They were various colors, from deep blue to bright pink to rich green, and each one was more beautiful than the last. As Amara picked up a crystal from the ground, the air around them seemed to shift. Alice couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something felt different. It was as if the cave was alive, pulsing with some kind of energy that she couldn't quite understand. "Be careful," Alice warned, eyeing the cavern warily. "There's something strange about this place." Amara laughed, twirling one of the crystals around in her hand and then putting it in her pocket.
"Don't be silly. It's just a bunch of rocks."
Alice hesitated, but Amara's enthusiasm was contagious. She decided to collect some for herself as well. As they gathered more crystals and made their way deeper into the cave, the walls began to glow, casting an eerie light around them. Alice felt a knot form in her stomach as they approached a narrow passage that seemed to lead even further underground. "Maybe we should go back," she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. But Amara was already forging ahead, her eyes alight with excitement.
"Just a bit further,"
she urged. Suddenly, they heard a deep rumble, and the ground started to shake. Alice's heart raced as she realized that they might have disturbed something in the cave. "We should leave now, Amara," she said, her voice shaky. Amara's eyes widened with excitement.
No way! We have to see what's causing this.
She started to walk deeper into the cave, and Alice reluctantly followed. Suddenly, they came upon a chamber where a bright light shone from the center. In the middle of the light, there was a small, glowing orb. The girls were amazed by the sight, until suddenly, the orb burst into a blinding light, enveloping the entire chamber. "What's happening?" asked Alice, looking around nervously.
I don't know,
Said Amara.
but I can't see.
The girls shielded their eyes as they dropped the crystals out of their hands and braced themselves for what was to come. When the light faded, the girls found themselves back outside the cave. They looked at each other, unsure of what had just taken place.
Oh,
Said Amara, still in shock.
what just happened?
"I don't know," said Alice, confused. As they walked back to their village, they were both silent, lost in their own thoughts. The incident at the cave had left them feeling uneasy, but also exhilarated. They had experienced something that was beyond their understanding. Before they reached their village, they made a pact not to say anything to anyone about the cave. When they arrived, they found that the adults were too busy with their work to pay much attention anyways. Over the next few days, Alice noticed that she had begun to develop strange abilities. She could sense things before they happened, and could communicate with animals in ways that no one else in her village could. She knew that she had been changed by the energy of the cave and the crystals it contained, and that she now possessed something that she didn't before. She was more connected to the natural world and more attuned with the energy of the earth. Also, Alice noticed that something was not quite right with the crystal she had brought back from the cave with her. Sometimes Alice would put the crystal in one place only to find it in a different spot later on. It seemed to be following her wherever she went. Even when she tried to get rid of it, the crystal would always find its way back to her. Alice began to feel uneasy about the crystal's persistent presence. She didn't know what to make of it, but she felt that she should get rid of it, so she tried everything she could think of. She buried it in the backyard and even threw it into the river. But no matter what she did, the crystal always found its way back to her. Alice was starting to get scared. She couldn't explain why the crystal was following her, and she didn't know what to do about it. One day, as Alice walked through the village, one of the elders approached her. The elder, who was known for his intuition and spiritual awareness, looked deep into her eyes and sensed that she was different. He knew that she had been touched by something powerful, something that set her apart from the others in the village. "Hello, sir," Alice greeted him politely, sensing the tension in the air.
"Alice, yes.
The elder replied sternly.
I hear you have been exploring the mountains."
"Yes," Alice replied, a hint of trepidation in her voice. The elder's expression darkened.
"You have no idea what dangers lurk in the mountains, Alice.
He scolded.
There are powerful forces that lay hidden in the earth. You should have never entered that cave. It is forbidden."
"But elder," Alice began before she was cut off.
"I don't want to hear it."
The elder interrupted, sounding deeply troubled.
Your powers are a curse, not a blessing. The cave has been covered again with rocks, as it had been before the earthquake. You must stay away from the mountain and never speak of this again."
Although she felt a sense of relief at the thought of the cave being sealed off, she knew that the power within it was real, and that it could never truly be contained. Alice's face fell, and she nodded silently. She could not deny the truth of his words. Somehow he had fallen a similar fate, yet it seemed the elder didn't want to talk to her about it. Although the cave was now sealed off, she knew that its power would continue to resonate through the mountains, forests, and desert. While Alice was intrigued with her new reality and amazed at the abilities she had gained from the mysterious crystal, Amara was struggling with her newfound gift. She loathed the visions that came with it and was desperate to be rid of the crystal. But no matter what she did, it seemed to always find its way back to her, taunting her with its relentless presence. One night, Amara decided to take matters into her own hands. She found a hammer and then took the crystal and smashed it into pieces, crushing the broken pieces into smaller pieces and then to dust, hoping that this would finally be enough to get rid of it once and for all. But as she lay in bed that night, she heard a strange noise coming from outside. It sounded like something was scratching at the window, trying to get in. Amara tried to brush it off as just the wind, but the noise continued, growing louder and more insistent. She got out of bed and went to the window to investigate, but there was nothing there. The next day, another aftershock rocked the village early in the morning. Alice was awakened by the rattling and shaking. It seemed like this one was mild compared to the other smaller earthquakes that occurred after the main one. She left her home with her mother to buy sundries at the market, and as they walked through the village, they realized something serious had happened. The townspeople were aghast with the news that the early morning earthquake had caused damage, in particular to one house. As Alice and her mother followed the crowds to see what had happened and got closer to the epicenter of the shocking development, Alice saw it was Amara's house. The roof had caved in. Everyone had been inside. No one survived. From that day forward, Alice no longer tried to get rid of the crystal. Instead, she reluctantly accepted its power and recognized it would be with her for as long as it chose to be.